Someone once asked the legendary Louis Armstrong to define jazz. The ebullient Satchmo is said to have replied, "Man, if you gotta ask what jazz is, you'll never know." Ask Roy Torgeirson to describe what it's like to jump out of an airplane at, say, 10,000 feet, and you'll get a similar answer.
I can't. You have to go up and do it yourself. You can watch it on TV, you can look at it in magazines, but to get the real feel for it, you have to go and experience it yourself.
For centuries, thinking man has been fascinated by the idea of jumping from high places and floating safely to Earth, assisted by some sort of mechanical device. 600 years ago, Leonardo da Vinci sketched the forerunner of the modern parachute, a pyramid-shaped canopy held open by a square wooden frame. The first actual parachute was designed in 1595 by a Croatian inventor named Faust Vrancic, sometimes called the father of parachutes. He examined Da Vinci's sketch, then built and tested his own invention by jumping from a tower in Venice in 1617. But for members of Skydive Southwest Florida, towers are so 17th century, they prefer jumping from airplanes. Roy Torgeirson operates the skydiving club out of the Shell Creek Airport in Punta Gorda, and also runs Rigs and Things, a parachute supply firm, from his Cape Coral home.
Nice jump, huh?
Torgeirson says he's been jumping out of planes for a long time.
It goes back over 30 years. I was at a soccer game back home in Norway, and me and my brother Terry was there, and they announced that the following weekend they were starting a skydiving course. Of course, back then there was mostly round parachutes, and we got hooked on it, and I guess the rest is history.
For many of us, skydiving is a secret fantasy, a guilty pleasure we harbor in our private dreams but seldom pursue, another item on our bucket list of things to do before we die. But here in Southwest Florida, Roy Torgeirson and his merry band of jumpers are making that dream come true. And he says that first jump also earns you membership in a tight-knit fraternity.
We want outsiders to become members, and then you understand what we're doing and why we're doing it. We have doctors, lawyers, ditch diggers, carpenters, you name it. When they all come here to skydive, we're all in the sandbox like kids, we're having a good time, and the social aspect is probably as important as the jump itself.
Wannabe jumpers have to be at least 18 years old and weigh less than 230 pounds. And they must belong to Skydive Southwest Florida, which owns the planes. But that's included in the $180 jump fee, which also covers equipment rental.
You have to be a member to them, but if you come in as a first-time student, tandem student, you automatically get a 30-day membership.
First-time skydivers can solo if they want, but the experts discourage that in favor of a tandem jump from an altitude of about 10,000 feet. For the math challenged, that's almost 2 miles above the surface of the Earth.
The tandems is where the jumper is physically harnessed to the jump master for the entire jump. It's the safest method available to the new jumper. You don't have to, but we highly recommend it because normally there used to be a 6 to 8 hour ground school before you can do your first jump, and if you just want to try it out once, the tandem method is definitely the way to go. It only requires about 20 minutes of training, and in the plane you go.
Growing up as a teenager in Cape Coral, Stephanie Faulkner long felt the urge to jump from an airplane, but she was stymied by her tender age. Finally, after graduating from high school, she got her chance.
I've always wanted to do this, kind of debated bungee jumping, but wanted to do this first. I wanted to do it for my 16th birthday, but you have to be 18, so kind of just happened before I have to leave for college. I decided I wanted to get it out of the way.
Did her friends and family think she was crazy?
A lot of them did, but a lot of them know that it's kind of just the excitement, just the thrill to do it, so they all kind of have a desire to do it as well.
I'm happy for her that she's going to be able to do it because she's wanted to do this for a long time. And but I get a little bit queasy about it. So hope everything goes fine.
Queasy, probably a common feeling for the first-time jumper, and the relatives who stay on the ground to watch and wait for the words, "They're out." And then there's the dread and unspoken question, what if the chute doesn't open? Torgeirson says not to worry.
It's a lot of what ifs in the beginning, but once you get into the sport and see how the equipment works, you feel pretty confident when we explain to you how it's set up. Number one, you're jumping 2 parachutes. You have 1 main parachute and 1 reserve parachute, and you also have a $1,500 computer which is set at a preset altitude in case you don't pull the ripcord yourself.
So, bottom line, how safe is skydiving?
Fairly safe. If you look at other extreme sports, it's one of the safest there is. Out of 2 million jumps average in the US a year, there's an average of 30 deaths. Half of those deaths is not caused by what if the chute doesn't open. That's really not an issue anymore because the equipment has become so very safe. It's usually somebody doing something stupid close to the ground under a perfectly good open parachute.
Most of the jumpers climbing in airplanes and heading up into the wild blue yonder on this warm spring day are veterans, like John Sparks of Naples. He's been at it for 5 years, closing in on 500 jumps and close to earning his instructor's certification.
Right now it's a hobby, but it's my life too. It's everything I do.
Skydiving is almost a subculture unto itself. The initiates bound together by their own language, their own rituals,
have a good jump, Joe.
their own Satchmo-esque mantra. If you have to ask, you just don't understand.
It's a brotherhood. It is. Yes, we have a very common link. You know, it doesn't matter whether we like each other or we don't. We put us in a plane together, and we're brothers.
To John Sparks and his airborne brethren, floating to Earth under a canopy of nylon is an almost mystical experience, especially what they call cross-country jumping.
When you come down, land on your feet.
Basically, we jump out about 4 or 5 miles away from the drop zone. We pull immediately, and we just slowly come back on the canopy. We skim the clouds, we ride around. It's just a beautiful ride. It's like skiing, but you're skiing the clouds. It's just the most beautiful thing you've ever seen. It's majestic.
But remember what Sir Isaac Newton taught us. What goes up must eventually come down. Skydivers are prone to proselytize. They preach to the uninitiated, eager to share the joys and rapture of their passion, and always seeking new disciples, new jumpers. They see skydiving as a life-changing experience.
For the person that does it for the first time, he does something that most people would never think of doing. So even if it's only a one-time experience, it stays with you for forever. And especially if a person gets a video, they will watch that video over and over again. So yeah, I think it changes most people's lives that try it for the first time.
Do it. Don't let the fear control you. You conquer that, you can conquer anything.
Well, all I can say is give it a try, and I think you'll find out that we're not that crazy after all.
Even rookie Stephanie Faulkner, still buckled up from her inaugural jump, is quick to recommend skydiving to the fearful or the hesitant.
I tell them to do it. The worst part is just the anticipation for it. But once you're up there, you're always thinking that the worst part is going to be jumping out, but you're thinking, like I said, more about what they told you to do and make sure you're doing it all right.
But how often does a first-time jumper get up in the plane, look down at the earth below, and decide, maybe this isn't such a good idea after all?
Out of my 2,100 tandems, I had 2 back out so far. So that's a pretty good record.
And what about young Stephanie Faulkner? Did the reality of her jump live up to the fantasy of her dream? We'll let the jump speak for itself.
It wasn't really as nerve-wracking as I thought it was going to be. It was more thinking about everything they told you to do and make sure you did everything right, and just kind of the feeling in your face is just kind of like a roller coaster, but you try not to, just try to enjoy the view and everything. So.
Which brings us back to where we began this report, with a question that every skydiver is asked. Why would you want to jump out of a perfectly good airplane?
The door was open. That's probably a good enough reason for most people.